Hello, everybody. My name is Taraj, and I'm a student at Citv Academy in my senior year. Welcome to the Ripple Effect. My co-host today in today's discussion is Leah Jeremy, a student at Citv Academy.
Hi, I'm Leah Jeremy, and wildlife in Bermuda has evolved separately from others in mainland due to the isolation of our island. This has paved the way for endemic species that are only found in Bermuda. It is our duty to protect these species.
Thank you. As we approach Wildlife Conservation Day this December, it's important to reflect on the role we all play in protecting Bermuda's unique wildlife, from our endangered coho to our vibrant coral reefs. The diversity of our wildlife, both on land and in the water, is crucial to the health of our island. Let's explore how government, politics, and community efforts can work together and safeguard natural treasures for the future generations. With us today are Jeremy Medeiros, thank you, Medeiros, Principal Scientist, Terrestrial Conservationist, okay, thank you, for the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. Robbie Smith from BZS, with BZS. Marine, ecologist, ecologist. Thank you very much.
That's okay. We're here to learn things. So getting terms right helps you communicate people when you can understand who they are, what they do. So yeah.
And curator of the Natural History Museum at the Bermuda Aquarium Museum and Zoo.
Which is part of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. So.
I would like, if you guys are willing, do a little bio for yourself, please. If you would like to just explain who you are, what you do.
I guess I have been in government now for close to 40 years. I originally born in Bermuda. I went to school here and such. Worked in a family business for a while, but I was really interested in the environment, and I joined the apprenticeship program for the Bermuda government at what was then Agriculture and Fisheries way back in 1984. I passed that and got a job as a cedar tree propagator until 1988. I went to the UK and got my degree in biology and species management at the University of Surrey, and came back as a park superintendent through the 1990s, from 1991 until 2000. But I worked the whole time with Dr. David Wingate, who was Bermuda's conservation officer, particularly on Nonsuch Island and with our national bird, the Cahao Recovery Project. When Dr. Wingate retired in 2000, I took up that post, and I've been in that post ever since for the last 24 years now. So, I've made a career out of working in Bermuda's environment, which was always my passion. And I'm not a person that likes to spend too much time in an office. So yeah, it's great to have been able to, and it's been a privilege to been able to work with some of Bermuda's most critically endangered species. So that's me.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jeremy?
I'm Dr. Robbie.
Dr. Robbie.
Okay.
Apologies.
We'll figure this out.
Yes.
Now, I'm also a Bermudian scientist. I got my start working at a summer internship at BIOS. It had a different name there back in 1977. Stimulated my interest in biology, finished off my degree, went to work as a research assistant at BIOS doing water quality, scuba diving around in our bays and harbors, seeing what was going on back then. And that just led to a strong interest in science. I came back and did all my PhD work at BIOS, studying the health of our reefs, getting to know how corals grow and what is important for their health, and fish are a very important part of that. Finished that off. I was at the University of Georgia for that degree, came back in 1990 and set up a research lab at BIOS to continue to do environmental research work. And fortuitously, Bermuda was about to change our waste management strategy from dumping everything in Marsh Folly to the Tynes Bay incinerator. And we wanted to know when we built that, what were the impacts going to be? So that involved studying the North Shore because we're going to pump out a lot of hot water, and what that was going to do. Was it going to be a stress for the seagrass or the reefs? Proved not to be the case. But the other part of that is taking all the residual ash and other waste and putting it in Castle Harbor next to the airport. Lovely scene. So studying the chemistry of the waters there to see what impact it might have. Pretty benign at the time, but it's been 30 years since that's going on. So I did that for quite a while, but then I left Bermuda and was a professor in Atlanta at Georgia State University for a while, and then I came back to take up the post of curator at the Natural History Museum. Just allowed me to get back into Bermuda's waters and do more work on our reefs. So I've been busy working collaboratively with lots of other Bermudian scientists, visiting scientists. We can talk about that as we go on. Mentoring lots of young people at the aquarium. We have a good internships program for you all to come over and have fun doing things there. There's more than just feeding the lemurs and polishing the tanks that goes on at the aquarium. And BZS, the Bermuda Zoological Society, is our partner charity designed to support what we do there, and it provides an opportunity to raise funds to do conservation work, so we can explore more of that as we go on tonight. So that's been keeping me busy for the last little while. And
thank you very much. Mr. Medeiros, what specific laws or regulations does the government currently have in place to protect Bermuda's wildlife?
Yeah, we actually have some, very, good, we have a whole suite of different laws and protections to protect both individual species and habitats that they need to live in, because it's no sense protecting an animal unless you protect the area it needs to survive in as well. That's key. And that's something that's a real problem in Bermuda. So, presently there's a number of things. The Parks Act actually protects a lot of land. It covers nature reserve areas, which my section in government specifically manages. I have 3 crew and 1 assistant conservation officer to manage 250 acres of nature reserve. So it's basically 5 of us managing 250 acres. And that's all protected. There's nature reserve areas and national park land is protected under the Parks Act. We also have specific ones. There's the Protection of Birds Act, which actually goes back quite far, but it's also been modernized and amended at different times. That protects all bird life, both the ones that live here and ones that fly here, migrate here. And there's 5 species that are listed as pest species that, they're, the feathered rats, I guess, things like starlings and sparrows and crows, the feral pigeons and such. But all other ones are protected, period. And then we also have, let's see, there's a Protected Species Act. That's one of the most recent ones. That is probably got the best protection, and that identifies hundreds of different species of everything from insects, invertebrates, fish, birds, animals, plants, and all of that. That is all covered under the Protection of Species Act. And that sets out not only which species are protected, but it also sets out penalties for, like, if you kill a species that's protected or you damage its habitat and such like that. And you can there's also other things like critical habitat for Nonsuch Island, for example, and for the islands where the cahal nests, that can be given extra protection as critical habitat, which means that you need a permit to visit these sites in the presence of a government officer or such like that. So there is a lot, compared to the Caribbean, where I've spent a lot of time working in at least 20 different countries and meeting with their scientists. They said, where you were like 30 years ago, that's where we are now, and they actually look upon us as a beacon of where they want to go in protection of species and habitats. So, I think, some of these laws have been in place for years, and they're really forward thinking. And whether you have the resources to administer all of those and protect all of them, that's a whole, another story and such. But yeah, we're
You can
pretty good.
look at our fisheries regulations. Some
Yep.
species are protected, as Jeremy mentioned, but the fishes that we use, we also regulate how you use them. So we say,
Yes.
okay, juveniles are protected. You can only take so many at a time when you are a fisher doing that. So those nuances of, okay, we have these species that are here, and they're not necessarily endemic, but their value at an ecological level is we got to have enough of them to do their job on a reef or in close to shore. So we have to manage that, and that's what the fisheries regulations allow us to get fishers to understand and respect those restrictions so that we can keep these species going. A good example is parrotfishes. As we got to the end of the 80s, that's about all we were eating here because we'd eaten all the other species, and we're using these non-selective fish traps. We got rid of those in 1990, but in 1993 we protected all parrotfishes. You cannot catch them. It's pretty easy to catch, and we still find people that abuse that, but their population recovery since that time is just remarkable, and that's something in the Caribbean that is, they like, I can't believe you guys did that.
Yes,
But food
yes.
security comes in different packages in different countries, and so for us, we've done other good work. We have our pelagic fishes to get to in the Caribbean nations. It's a lot more challenging to say, sorry, you can't take those parrotfish. Food security is a really important issue.
Thank you, Dr. Smith, and we'll be right back.
Welcome back. I'm Leah. Dr. Smith, what are the main wildlife biodiversity challenges facing Bermuda, and how does your organization address these issues?
Biodiversity challenges. Well, we talked about at the beginning about habitats, because if you can't have a habitat that's going to be functional, then all the species you care about, they're not going to be able to survive. So we look at what we've accomplished, and that's really remarkable, the story of the cow in particular, and how Jeremy and his predecessor, Dr. David Wingate, transformed Nonsuch Island into being a proto-Bermuda, what it was before any colonists showed up here. So the challenges are hanging on to what we talked about at the beginning, our endemic species. So the cow is doing pretty well, but we have a few other animals. We have our endemic Bermuda skink. It needs a habitat to live in. It's doing okay at Nonsuch, but it needs more places. So with the aquarium and the Zoo Society, we've been working with Chester Zoo to do some captive breeding of the skinks. And we do that by knowing who's the mom and who's the dad, so we can have good broad genetic diversity. And then we bring the skinks back to Bermuda. We release some on Nonsuch, but most have gone to Trunk Island. We've also done the same thing with 2 of our endemic land snails. Everybody is excited about land snails, but they exist here, and one's really a really old species, and going back to the earliest part of Bermuda's history. So they've also been benefiting from captive breeding at Chester Zoo, brought back here. A lot of them have been put on Nonsuch, done very well. So we have to cherry pick the ones that are really critical, because if we don't do anything, they're gone, right? That doesn't work. So we've been really addressing that very successfully. But that's kind of on a small scale. We've got nature preserves, we've got Trunk Island, we can talk more about that, and certainly the benefits at Nonsuch. But around that, we keep working at trying to improve the habitat. So Cooper's Island's adjacent to Nonsuch, we clean it up. We try to get rid of the invasive trees and try to make that a better habitat that for species we don't really spend a lot of time on. Some are insects, some are small plants, they need habitat. So continuing to battle back invasive plants, and we know the big ones like the casuarina, but a lot of other ones that are problematic. So taking the time to try to fix the habitat is the only way forward to be able to stabilize the future for either the endemics or the natives, so they're just as valuable in what they do and how they benefit us. That's my short answer.
Thank you. Mr. Medeiros, how does the government collaborate with conservation organizations, scientists, and the local community to address biodiversity loss and ensure effective conservation efforts?
Yeah, thanks, Leah. That's actually really diversified in recent years. I mean, I've been in this line of work long enough to see, whereas before we were doing everything within the community, within the very few scientists that, within governments and at organizations like, BIOS and such, that was there. It was hard to get in contact with other organizations from other countries or even within here. But recently, I mean, we've been involved with NGO groups like Bermuda Audubon Society, the Bermuda National Trust and such. We do have tours that are held with both the Bermuda Zoological Society and BIAS. They bring a lot of tours out to Nonsuch Island, which I manage. We have almost 60 tours a year go out there with anywhere, up to 2,000 or more people, and 80% of them are students. They're educational groups, that run right up to college level and back to there. That's what we really cater to. And we are starting to use schools to actually help us with managing critically endangered species like the cahao. Right now, we're in the early stages of using a 3D printer machine. I believe Warwick Academy is the school that has it. And with cahao nests, we need to put like a wooden, it's called a baffle, in front of the entrance to stop longtails from going in and killing the cahao chicken, taking over the nest. When they're wood, they only last 2 or 3 years. When it's been wet, like we've been having a lot of years lately, they rot away in no time. And so if we can get a 3D printer to print one out in a composite material, they'll last 20 or 30 years. And as the population has increased, it's gone from 17 pairs to about 50 pairs when I took over from Dr. Wingate, and this year we reached 165 pairs. So it's getting beyond the ability for me to go with a jigsaw and cut these things out of wood, and they have to be very precise so that the cahaos can go in, but the longtails can't. So using school expertise, new technology, new techniques is going to be, I think, more and more important in the future. The latest thing is we've been doing a lot of work with overseas researchers from 5 countries, the US, Canada, the UK, Italy, and Portugal. I think that's all of them. There are things we want to investigate with the cahao. Their breeding success is lower than it should be. We think it's because of chemicals they're picking up from their food in the ocean. We don't have the expertise for that, so we've engaged researchers that come down, help us take blood samples, and then they'll take it back to their labs and analyze, just as one example, the blood for persistent organic pesticide compounds in their blood. They're getting that from fish and squid and things like that they're eating. And that has real relevance to us because we eat some of the fish we eat the same things the cahaos are eating. So they're like a canary in a coal mine. And so, yeah, we've had students at University of Lisbon and Queen's University in Canada that have analyzed this. And as a result now, we have a lot of information on that. So all these things, it's the internet, communications revolution. Well, when I started my career, there was no internet. There weren't even computers. There were no cell phones or nothing. You went out to the islands, you were on your own, one person, completely isolated. But nowadays, there are little tracking tags the size of my fingernail we put onto the legs of cahaos, and we can track them for 2 years all around the ocean to within a meter or two. We can tell what wave they're on in the ocean up by Iceland somewhere. That's how far our cahaos go. So yeah, that I think is going to be more and more important going forward, is forming alliances and forming partnerships with local groups, schools, and overseas organizations and researchers. That's going to be a key thing for helping us in Bermuda to protect these species, which are our natural heritage. We talk about heritage and such. Well, Bermuda has a natural heritage, and it's unique, and it's something we should be proud of, some of the stuff we're doing here, and that's going to really help us to do that.
Another good example of that is our Sargasso Sea Commission. I sit on that commission, and that is trying to get all the countries that border the Sargasso Sea to recognize that if we don't stop the plastic or the overfishing, all those resources that are necessary for the success of whales and seabirds isn't going to get very far in this century. So that's been really interesting to see these partnerships build up. Bermuda's been good at strategic partnerships, and that's how we can leverage what we know to bring in people to help us, whether they're, we had Greenpeace here to come in to toot the horn about the Sargasso Sea because we need to get the UK and other countries on board with signing this new UN High Seas Treaty. So that's what we're good at, is leveraging opportunities with students and NGOs, and they're local or they're international.
Thank you.
Thank you once again, Dr. Smith. We'll be going on a short break.
Hi, welcome back. So we have heard from our NGO specialist and our government specialist, and now I would love to open up the table to our guests, Leona and Aaron.
So, Mr. Medeiros, what are the actions that the government is taking to mitigate the impacts of climate change on Bermuda's ecosystem, such as rising sea levels and rising water temperatures?
Yeah, thanks, Leona. That actually is a great question, because much of the management that our department has been doing with seabirds in particular, but coastal species, and really has been focused on addressing that. With the Cahal Recovery Project, literally we have had to look at the original little rocks that they were nesting on are literally falling apart because of the rising sea levels and the increase in hurricanes that we've been having over the last 25 years. It's gotten to the point where, and they're very small anyway, so we can only increase their population so much, but they're literally falling apart. We had 2 of the islands are regularly submerged by hurricanes as sea levels rise. One of them, the whole center, has collapsed because of Hurricane Fabian back in 2003. And so I had to go to Australia, learn these techniques to carry out something called translocation. That's where we actually monitor the Cahal chicks after they hatch. When they reach a certain point in their development, just over half grown, I would actually take them from the nest, put them in a box, take them to Nonsuch Island, and put them in artificial nest burrows, underground burrows that they nest in, that I had built for them on Nonsuch Island. Because Nonsuch is 7 times bigger than all of the other nesting islands put together, and it's much higher. It should be safe from sea level rise and hurricane erosion for thousands of years, hopefully. And there's room for thousands of pairs on there. And it's, of course, Dr. Wingate restored it for many years, and I've continued that. So I did that for 10 years, 2 different projects. I moved something like 170 Cahal chicks. Once you move them, you have to take care of them. I became their foster daddy and fed them every day, monitored their growth. When they come out at night, getting ready to leave, they imprint on the new site rather than the original place they came from. They go out to sea, and then I'm like, okay, are they going to come back? And 3 to 4 years later, if you've done everything right, they will return to their point of departure. And I started moving them 2004. In 2009, sitting there, 5 years after we started, sitting on Nonsuch Island at night, looking for signs of them. And for the first time in living memory, we had them starting to come in right over the site where the burrows were. And then one landed, and the first time it happened, it landed 3 feet from me, walked up to me, climbed on my lap. I picked it up, and I looked from the band number on its leg. I said, this is a bird. I moved here as a chick 4 years ago from a nest that was close enough to touch. So the technique worked perfectly. And right now, 15 years after that started, we have 41 pairs on Nonsuch, producing record numbers. So that's the extent we've had to do to protect that species, which is very important to our history, and it's our national bird. So it's a key thing. Also with longtails, we've had to install artificial nests at higher places because hurricanes are destroying a lot of the nests. I think we lost 20 of the chicks that I monitor every year. I monitor 300 nests as part of a long-term study, and 20 of the chicks were killed by Hurricane Ernesto in August. So we are building new nests in high locations where they're safe from hurricanes, and that has enabled the longtail to actually start increasing its population for the first time in over 100 years over the last 6 or 7 years. The surveys we do have indicated that 7 out of 10 sites, their populations have increased pretty steadily because of, we're just giving them safer housing, out of reach of storms. So yeah, that's a lot of the management that we do, and even BZS does, and is geared towards that, because on an island, that climate change is going to have dramatic effects on not only the animals that live there, but even on humans, you know, how we address it.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Medeiros, how can young people and citizens engage with the government initiatives or participate in decision-making processes that affect wildlife conservation and environmental sustainability in Bermuda?
Yeah, Aaron, that is real important, because a big reason why people like Robbie and myself and the other people in the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, the reason why we do the work we are, we're not going to see, hopefully, the impact, the full impact of what the work we're doing now. It's for you guys. It's for the next generations of young Bermudians. You're the guys that in the next, hopefully, 10, 15 years or less are going to be taking over what we do. You will be, you know, out there working with these species. You'll be in labs. You'll be, you know, doing research on it. And I think it's become more and more important to engage, you know, young people, school age, college age Bermudians in protecting. It's your natural heritage. You know, we talk about Bermuda's heritage and such. Our natural heritage is the thing that makes Bermuda unique, different from any other place on the planet. And we do have some amazing animals and habitats. So I think ways that you can contribute. How I started was I actually got involved in some of these NGO groups. When I was a teenager, I got involved in you know, what at that time as school kids we often thought these stodgy old, you know, sort of NGO groups like the Audubon Society, Bermuda National Trust. They're happy to take in young Bermudians that are, you know, energetic and interested in their future.
Internship opportunities.
Internships. Yeah, we have often taken interns that work with us, you know, out on Nonsuch Island in the summer. Even with the Cahows, we have infrared cameras. We have a website that we can't watch it 24/7. We have a life too. We have work. We have pets. We have family. So you know, we've actually had students that have volunteered to look and see, and they've observed things completely new, never been seen before, by looking at like Cahao cams that are infrared cameras installed into the nest burrows. You can go on Nonsuch expeditions and watch this any night, anytime you want. You can go on it right now and see exactly what's happening. There's a new pair that came back last night in the middle of that storm that's in Cahao Cam 1. So I challenge you to do that. But also just to get engaged in volunteer projects. Our department does, and Bermuda Zoological Society has an amazing facility. Yeah, out Trunk Island and such, planting native plants, helping to take out invasive species, and participating in research, even going diving and going on reef surveys and things like that. There's a lot of ways to do it, but you know, we will always encourage it, and it's going to be up to, you know, people like yourself that are engaged and interested in it. That's the main thing. You have to have an interest in it. I was lucky. I just had an interest in it from young. I always liked animals and learning about science and stuff, and so that eventually led to a career that has, you know, I've been happy to be in for 40 years.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So there's a couple new things that have come on the scene. That's how we communicate, right?
Yeah.
We have the internet. So our government's been pretty good at creating public forums where they have a question. Give us your input on what you think about this. So I think for young people, is paying attention to, are the questions that the government wants your input, and just don't leave it to your parents and grandparents to do that.
Yeah.
Understand what those questions are, because they have implications for how how our future is going to be here on the island. So look for that and educate yourselves. Take advantage of course opportunities at the aquarium. At BIOS is another great center for learning about different things, and the more knowledge you have, the better you're able to ask questions or understand the questions that are being asked of you. If you want to be involved, you got to get in there, get your hands dirty, learn something, and that either comes with hands-on stuff or it comes on with just reading and absorbing and then reflecting on that and be able to put that information, like, I want to know more about this, I want to give you my opinion about that. I think that's what we have in a good democracy here is that our government's been very proactive in trying to get input rather than just making up decisions. They really want input. So there's an opportunity there. You should take it.
Yeah.
Dr. Smith, can you share some of the most impactful conservation projects your organization has led to protect endangered species or restore habitats in Bermuda?
Yeah. So I talked briefly earlier on about what we've done on Trunk Island, which was really centered. That's kind of replacing nonsuch and creating a habitat where we can bring in the skinks, bring in the snails. It's not going to work for cows, but we do have longtails there, because longtails are a little different in terms of how they start their lives and when they're leaving those nests. So the Zoo Society and the aquarium work together to support research. So we're always trying to find ways to take monies that we have that the conservation group, BZS, can raise out of the public and put that to work. So we support Bermudian graduate students, foreign grad students, visiting scientists to come in and address questions. So about 1.5 years ago, we had this American scientist who teaches in Europe. He wants to find a snail that hadn't been seen alive since the 1920s. And we dug around where we thought we'd find it, couldn't find it, but we did find it. It's an endemic species, about this big. It's not very exciting, but that's an example of how you can take someone who knows something about Bermuda, support them, come in, now we've got an opportunity to go to work on this tiny endemic snail. So the other thing we've done a lot recently is supporting the efforts to eliminate lionfish with the Lionfish Task Force. That was an initiative came out of the Zoo Society. We raised funds to support that. We're going to have a culling program for young people in the next 2 weeks, I think. So if you want to go out there and poke some lionfish, you can learn how to do that safely and understand the value of trying to remove them. Invasive species are always problematic. We've been doing a good job. We're eating our way to beating them. Yeah, and they're very delicious. So those are the highlights of taking a habitat like Trunk Island, working in conjunction with the rest of the Department of Environment to bring in other scientists and students to work on tackling some of the questions. Just this summer, we had another English student here studying the genetics of our skinks, because they're kind of spread around the island, and we need to know what their genetic makeup is in order to be effective at conserving them. We learn lots of things when you can get into the genome. Things aren't exactly what you think they are. So those are some of the highlights of the conservation efforts, but we could go on for another 20 minutes.
What do you see as the most effective long-term solution to protecting Bermuda's wildlife biodiversity in the face of climate change and other environmental pressures?
There's a lot of us living here, and it's trying to find a way for us to combine our efforts together to start to reset the clock. So invasive species are a problem. It's taken a huge amount of effort to clean up Trunk Island. It took David Wingate and Jeremy 30 or 40 years to do that, and you still have to keep working at it because the invasive species, they never go to sleep. So harnessing all our collective energy towards tackling the low-hanging fruit of cleaning up invasive species is a good starting place. Going forward, climate change is really driven by how we've affected our climate through our use of fossil fuels. So how do we get Bermuda closer to that net zero where our fossil fuel use goes down along with the rest of the planet so that we don't have to worry about sea level rise as much, or warming oceans, or acidified oceans that compromise the life in the ocean. So we can only do what we can do for our 60,000 people who live here in terms of the consumer choices we make. Are we going to avoid using single-use plastics and use recyclable, repurposable devices here? Can we get away from two-stroke engines and go get electric bikes and things like that? Those are consumer-driven choices, and we have a level of wealth and opportunity here to make this country work really well. And maybe that'll inspire other islands, nations to say what's going on. And we learn from them. We have good dialogue with our colleagues in the Caribbean and what they've accomplished. Most of them are way ahead of us in terms of single-use plastic elimination. We're getting there. So those are some of the things we have to think about. It's collective, but also individual responsibility for making decisions of how we do what we do to try to dampen down this climate change, which is so diverse in its impacts and how it is manifest here. Sea level rise is one thing, but a lot of other factors. So there's opportunity, but that comes out of education. As you learn more, you can influence your friend and your family, and you can say, hey, we can get together and do that.
Yes. What role do volunteers, especially young people, play in your conservation efforts, and how can we get more involved in making a difference?
I think paying attention, and when we put out a call for we need help doing this, that happens mostly people who are not busy at school, because you guys have obligations when you're in school as young people. You don't have your time to give. But at a parish level, at your school level, there are opportunities. You just have to sort of figure out, hey, we want to go and learn about this. How can we get involved to do that? So it's a bit of a two-way street. We need to be more effective at asking for your help, but having a forum like this is a chance to share information. So like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. I'd like to learn about that. Let's get involved and do that. It's just having communication so that we can say, we need help doing these things. Here's tools, information, knowledge that you can put to work that's going to help get things done. Every NGO in Bermuda is dependent on having young people want to be stepping up to help out. And whether it's cleaning up the roadsides, cleaning up the plastic on the beaches, planting trees with the microforest, that's another big project we've got going on at the BZS. Those are opportunities, but you can't wait for it to happen. You got to push it. So it's a bit of a push from you guys saying, "Hey, come on, get us busy," and us recognizing like we really need the help, and we need you to have opportunity to learn and participate and grow and appreciate all the stuff we've accomplished. We'll get there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. I'd like to say, protecting Bermuda's wildlife starts with each of us. Get involved in local conservation efforts, reduce your plastic use, and help protect our unique ecosystem. Remember, every individual action creates a ripple effect. By making small changes, we can collectively safeguard our environment for future generations.
That's the ripple effect. Thank you for joining us. Learn more at buei.org and get involved.